Hello and welcome back to Bible Wits Bible Corner. Today we're going to keep reading in Acts 21. We're going to be reading verses 25 through 32, starting with the English Standard Version. But as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. Then Paul took them in, and the next day he purified himself along with them, and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled, and the offering presented for each one of them. When the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who is teaching everyone everywhere against the people and the law and this place. Moreover, he even brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place. For they have previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian with him in the city, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. Then all the city was stirred up, and the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. And as they were seeking to kill him, word came to the tribune of the cohort that all of Jerusalem was in confusion. He at once took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them. And when they saw that the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. New Century Version. We have already sent a letter to non-Jewish believers. The letter said, "Do not eat food that has been offered to idols, or blood, or animals that have been strangled. Do not take part in sexual sin." And the next day, Paul took the 4 men and shared in the cleansing ceremony with them. Then he went to the temple and announced the time when the days of the cleansing ceremony would be finished. On the last day, an offering would be given for each of the men. When the 7 days were almost over, some of his people from Asia saw Paul in the temple. Oh, give me a second. When the 7 days were almost over, some of his people from Asia saw Paul at the temple. They caused all the people to be upset and grabbed Paul. They shouted, "People of Israel, help us. This is the man who goes everywhere teaching against the law of Moses, against our people, and against this temple. Now he has brought some Greeks into the temple and has made this holy place unclean." They said this because they had seen Trophimus, a man from Ephesus, with Paul in Jerusalem, and they thought that Paul had brought him into the temple. All the people in Jerusalem became upset. Together they ran, took Paul, and dragged him out of the temple. The temple doors were closed immediately. While they were trying to kill Paul, the commander of the Roman army in Jerusalem learned that there was trouble in the whole city. Immediately he took some officers and soldiers and ran to the place where the crowd was gathering. When the people saw them, they stopped beating Paul. Okay, so we see here that Paul did take part in this cleansing. Now, what it doesn't say, and what I believe did not happen, is they were wanting Paul to say that he was teaching false things. I don't think Paul did that. There's no evidence in the Bible that says Paul admitted to teaching anything false. What I think happened, and those that are historians, biblical historians, they would know this better than me. Paul respected both the Jewish culture and the Gentile cultures. He knew that they were different, and he knew that forcing one to do the other would be near impossible. So he took the teachings that Jesus had taught him, and he was able to use those teachings to still preach to the Gentiles and to the Jews, while still proclaiming 100% God's word. Now, the Jews did not like that he was still preaching to the Gentiles. They thought that he was defiling the temple, defiling the Jewish culture, the law of Moses. They thought he was defiling all of that. So they were trying to kill him. And as we see here at the end of this passage, some Roman commanders, Roman soldiers had heard about this and were going to see what the commotion was. So we will find out what happens tomorrow on all of that. But what I would like to take from this is it is okay to understand culture. It is okay to understand that people are going to learn differently, do things differently. The important thing is, and I have said this before, as long as we follow this, God's word, the way it is supposed to be followed, I will personally say culture doesn't matter. And here's why I say that. There's people that say that certain books, Corinthians, Timothy, Ephesians, all of them were written to those specific regions because of their culture. Well, if it was written to them because of their culture, one, those letters were only meant for that region, and that's not the case. These letters were circulated everywhere. Two, if it was only meant for that culture, it would have no relevance to us today. So culture does not matter. God's word is what matters. And that's what Paul was trying to get across. So, I hope you find encouragement in this, and I hope you have a wonderful, God-centered day. Bye.